Hello gaming tankers, glad to see you back. Before we get too far in this video, please join me in the tanker's prayer. Thank Jeebus, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, because wargaming maketh the rules, so wargaming can breaketh the rules. Now, I'm not going to review the Type 90-2, instead I'm going to do something a little different here. I'm going to do 3 videos featuring the entry tanks for the line in each era, starting off with the Type 59, then the Type 79, and then the Type 85-2. So here we are on Himmelsdorf, trying not to get hit by the T-95E3. Instead, we're going to take on our Israeli cousin, the Turan 5SH. I say cousin because they're both based off of the Type 55, T-55 Soviet tank, which is a tank you're going to see a lot of in Cold War because, well, Soviets handed those things out like candy. Because we're shooting APCR, we can shoot right through that truck and into the fuel tank of the Turan. And one thing you're going to notice that kind of is a theme throughout all these. Oh, I should mention, the reason for the slow reload and the slightly limited mobility is because all the tanks I'm playing are stock. No equipment either. Just the regular boosters. So I'm tracking and hitting the gas tank while also taking 8 seconds to reload. This is a tank, the T-55s, that have mobility out of the gate, which allows you to you can play around with that. You can focus on more speed, or you could focus on the gun and become more of a sniper. It's a versatile tank because you also have some armor, so you can be aggressive. However, the one thing that is gonna be something you might want to focus on is the turret speed can't keep up with the hull rotation, so slow turrets for the T-55 and all variants is something you kind of want to address, especially once you start having to shoot on the move. What I also like about the Type 59 is that it keeps the 100mm of the T-54s, T-55s, because the 100mm boom snouts, I think, are a real sweet spot in Era 1. They will have they're in between the 90mm and 105s, which means you have a longer reload than the 90mm, but it's shorter than the 105s, but you still have good penetration and damage. Better than the 90mm, not as good as the 105, but with that reload, your DPS is more agreeable. It's a nice middle zone for me. Now we're making our way back to the enemy base, and I'm concerned because I know there are some big dogs up top shooting, so I'm waiting to see if anyone comes off the hill, as we're now gone all the way across the map, and it seems like the enemy team, some of it anyways, is on the other side of the map. And then I'm just trying to see who's coming around the corner, which is a struggle of Himmelsdorf, because I know there's FP4-5s. You don't want to see them coming around the corner. But I do know that there's the Type 62. That is a lovely light tank of the Chinese line, which I suggest you kind of check out. It's equivalent to the M41. Maybe the American lighting's a little bit better, but, you know. I would say, the type of player to recommend to play this tank line, in fact maybe the whole tech tree, including the light tanks, is a player with some mod or something. Now the reason I'm loading HE here is because the FP4005 is coming around, and I want that turret, and that turret has no armor, and it has ammo Rex, which is why I'm aiming for the side. The truth be told is, I'm not really afraid of the FP4005s in this situation. Their turret rotation is limited and I just can get up there and do a lot of damage with my HE. It's actually that light tank that worries me because they can move around and get my flank and do the most damage. The FP4005s, I can outmaneuver them, even stock, and just pump the HE into those turrets and just get high rolls and get rolls, 500 damage. Sadly, no ammo racks, but that's the name of the game. What I like about the T-55 types is, in Era 1, they're probably one of the few medium tanks, unlike the Western equivalents, until the Type 773 came along, that offered you speed. You really could get to 60 kph relatively easily with a few minor adjustments and upgrades, and could kind of dominate the slower Western line tanks, especially the heavies and stuff. And that is really nice to have. Here's the Object 165, which, if you were to ask me which tank line to try out, the Chinese or the Soviet in Cold War, I'm still going to lean more to the tank line I started first, which was the Russian tanks, just because of how great the T-72s are in Era 2. The Chinese line here, as you'll see shortly, continues to just have upgraded T-55s, which, at least in Era 2, it works, but once you get that T-72A and you start getting the feel for the Soviet MBTs, you really kind of feel like how limited this tank line has been. But with that said, it really is a toss-up depending on what kind of playstyle you like, for like the Leopards versus the Chinese type tanks, and actually the Romanian TR tanks, because up until the TR 580 came along and the TR 85, the Leopard tanks had the best speed for medium tanks until they came along, and then the TRs were like, oh, we really speed boosted the Type 55 tank, so you still had that frontal armor that the Leopards lack, but you also have the speed and the high rate of fire of 100mm boom sounds, which the Leopard 105s are actually pretty. 105s in Era 2 are probably the best type of boom snout to have on your tank. However, here with the Type 79, you remember that 8-second reload we had previously? Yeah, that's still here, and unfortunately, along with laggy internet, if you can see, that is where you really want to get that down quick in Era 2. And I will just say, this isn't going to be a spectacular match because, for whatever reason, when I was trying to get a video to document this tank, this play session was something like I played this tank 6-7 times or so. No, I think it was like 7, maybe 8. I mentioned Leopard tanks, and he just comes a calling. Yeah, I know. It's not a Leopard, though. Sorry. And for whatever reason, in War Gaming, World of Tanks, Modern Armors, Matchmaker, my teams lost 6, 7 out of those 8 matches. It was literally like, oh, I only got 1 victory in this tank out of all the matches, and that was not a good victory. It was one of the first tanks taken out, so it was miserable. I was not thrilled. So this is the best I could do. Now, of course, we're into an era where you definitely feel being stocked and lacking equipment. You know you are outclassed, so you have to play support. You have to hold back, which is hard when I have the aggressive playstyle. You try tracking, but because this is a Soviet type tank, accuracy is sometimes not there. You get that Russian derp. You don't get the Russian bias, but you get the derp. So I say that as I'm about to take a awesome shot here on the BMP-2. Take a look here. Bring it around. Right into it. You have to aim long. You really have to focus and make sure your shots are where you're going to put them. And then hope RNG doesn't screw you because, yeah, I know that was still a great shot on the FE. But unfortunately, that's where my fun ends. Now, as far as mobility goes for the Type 79, you feel a bit clumsier. Again, the Leopards are really good at the mobility. Oh man, the TR-580, once you get that engine upgrade, and then TR-85, ooh, you can really haul your butt around the map. And the Type 7 not so much. The tank that comes after this, however, is pretty sweet. But then again, actually, when I first played through this tank line, I never bought the upgrades for this tank, and I don't have equipment on it now. So it's actually interesting to be like how much better I'm going to make this tank once I buy the upgrades. But it does have 105, and versus the T-62, which is the Russian equivalent to this, well, it's the tank that is part of the first tank you get in the Russian line. When it comes to the Russians, 115 and 125 boom snouts versus any of the 105 millimeter boom snouts, it's the 105s have usually equal or better penetration but lower alpha, while the 125s and those bigger caliber ones have the higher alpha and lower penetration. You know, Wargaming's balancing. But the 105s, they have the higher rate of fire, and with the armor that's in Era 2, which is usually rarely any of it's over 300 millimeters, so you don't really have to worry about penetration, except for maybe some of like the Mobat, obviously the FE-4211. So, and here we are. Yeah, this is... I didn't stick with my team. I tried to defend the base, slow down the enemy, and that hurt me. Cowbang isn't always... It can be your undoing sometimes for maps, but... Yeah, the Type 79, it's... When you're playing at stock, it can be a challenge, especially when it's like, alright, I need my team to do well so I can support them well, and if they're not doing well, yeah, support tanks don't do well. So it's, yeah, I can see the flaws in it, but now we go on to the whole reason that you'll be wanting to, well, it's a cheesy reason to why you would want to play this tank line. It's why I was kind of excited to play these tanks, because we're going to get into the actual Chinese MBTs, and it's kind of a ridiculous reason to play them, but it's also kind of cool. And when you're playing a video game loosely based on real world tanks, I think cool's a pretty good thing. For me, it's kind of the X factor for why you would want to grind through this tank line. I mean, the Chinese, like I said, this tank line is good for players with a little bit of skill, because the Chinese may have made some improvements, but they also, it's like, oh, we have this, we'll do the whole numbers thing like the Soviets, but at the same time, oh, maybe having some quality might be good. The reason you might want to play this whole tank line is, as you'll see with the Type 85-2 here, I call these the coffin top tanks because the turret looks like a coffin. And to me, that's kind of cool. This, however, what you're about to see is not so much me showing off the strengths of this tank, but its weaknesses, because the Type 85 versus the next thing, the Type 85-3, has some weakness in the armor department. While you may have a shallow turret, your hull is not. You are what you would call a tank. You're tall, you're big, and without the ERA armor that you get on the next tank, you can be penned from afar. Maybe they're shooting gold, I don't know. but I'm getting hit. This is a tank that you definitely don't want to get hit in. And unfortunately, your boom snout, we still all right. It's ammo rack now, so that's why it's taking longer. But you still have that about 8-second reload, and unlike some of the following up MBTs and some of the, although the Leopards definitely had good guns and stuff. Yeah, your accuracy. You look at the bloom on that reticle. It is moving out here as I move. There are some tanks, and yes, the following MBTs in this line even, they're very accurate on the move, and you can be relatively confident too that you may not penetrate, but you at least hit the dang target. And that's kind of, that's how it always is with the stock tanks in World of Tanks. Like, yep, when you're bottom tier or bottom era, you feel all the weaknesses, and sometimes you will unlock a strength, but other times it's more of like, just get me to the next thing, please. I never felt that with the Chinese line up until actually the Type 90-2, because that was the export version of the Type 85-3. So it lacks the ERA armor. It has some of the technological upgrades and stuff, but it's sort of like, it's more of like a slightly better version of the Type 85 than the Type 85-3. So it's like you peak with the Type 85-3, and then you take a drop down with the Type 90-2. But it chronologically came after, so for whatever reason, that's why it's top of the era for the Chinese MBTs. As I say, when you're in these situations, when you're bottom era and you're stock and you're just starting out, you play the sport. Stay back. Let all the other tanks do the detection for you. Maybe get some of the damage in. You just focus on aiming your shots, going for tracks. Tracking damage still applies here, especially if they're not running tracking or track mechanic, which speeds up the repair time on damaged tracks. And if you get a better reload time, you can keep them perma track. You can't really do that now, but just, don't be the team leader, be the team player. It's frustrating, I know, but that's what you got to do until you get to the upgrades, and then you can become part of the pack more. It's so, once you actually analyze, like, it's so weird to have like that. You still have that Russian mentality of like, we have a really small turret, and then, well, unlike the T-72s really are almost as large as medium, but here the Type 85 is very much has the hull of what you would think of it when you think of a modern MBT. So it's a little bit odd looking tank, but yeah, I love the coffin top tanks. And it's actually kind of, I think it's just because you require that little bit of skill and to play them well, that it's enjoyable for me to play. So I'm not, if you want to try them out for your first tank line, go for it. I don't think you'll regret it. You won't be as punished as if, let's say, the Leopards, because the Leopards don't have any armor. You have some versatility where you have the T-55 armor profile, angle that tank, angle that hull, and you can still bounce shots and ATGMs, which can give you that security. And you may not have the best when it comes to camouflage, but it's still something you might try to get down. But yeah, it's honestly, I am biased because I love the T-72, so there's that. But anything T-55 based, you don't have the gun depression, which I know everyone complains about. But once you start moving around and maybe you start getting into those brawls, you'll suddenly realize, I don't need gun depression. I just need to get around the opposing tank faster and get to those sides and do the tracking damage and get them sitting still and really pump the rounds in while they're bouncing shots on me. That can happen. You just gotta be patient and learn to know what the moment is to strike. That felt bad, but aim through the front drive wheel, which is easy to penetrate into the hull and get the kill on that one. Yes, aim for those driving wheels. Usually from the side you can penetrate, especially at the closer range. Sadly, don't get the Merkava because of the slow reload time, but this can be a fun tank line. I don't think you're really going to struggle with it overall, but you might find yourself being a little frustrated. Oh, I have to hold back. Play it, enjoy it, and I hope you keep your tracks on the ground. The RNG's in your favor. And hey, leave your comments below and down below. Oh yeah, like and subscribe if you like T55 tanks. I'll catch you in the next one, and hope to see you around in the Type 85-3 tank, the best Chinese tank. Catch you next one. Bye.